I know you. You think through every possible scenario before it's even happened. Last week I had to do a presentation. You should have seen the sweat patches I had. I was thinking through what could happen if I said things wrong, if I got the slide wrong, the introduction wrong. What happens if I was speaking too quickly and people couldn't understand what I said and I had to repeat myself? What happens if I say the things wrong and then my partner can't like follow it through and she has to kind of like mess up as well? You think through everything, what could go wrong, what could go right. Then it gets even more chaotic when you think about everything that could go wrong and then what you would do if those things go wrong. It's kind of like you're working through the solutions of everything, kind of like making yourself prepared. Thinking through every single possible scenario in your head makes you feel like you're being productive. It makes you feel like you're doing something right. But then actually, does it get you anywhere? Are you making things worse? Is this actually a good use of your time? But can you even get rid of it? Is it something that you're just stuck with? Because I've been doing this for years. Or is there something deeper going on? Let's unpack the exhausting world of thinking through every possible scenario in your head.
Yes, I did that.
Because I ain't got the fish shoes. Bloop. Yes, I.
And you would do it too for a check.
Before we get started, a key thing to note is that overthinking is pleasurable. Forget porn or junk food or scrolling on Instagram for 2 hours, scrolling on TikTok for 4 hours. Overthinking is pleasurable. It gives you like a weird comfort. Like when my presentation last week, I had to talk about like a medical case. We were in psychiatry and I had to kind of give a summary of this patient. It wasn't a real patient, it was fictional, and I had to then talk about like the steps on how to treat them and get them better and like improve their mental health. Bearing in mind, I am not very good at psychiatry. This is my weakest topic in medicine by far. I analysed the case inside out. You asked me any question about this fictional imaginary patient and I knew it. Did that help? I don't think so. I was still very nervous and I was still very anxious. But beforehand, I remember literally trying to calm myself down, like deep breaths, Christina, like relax, like it's just a presentation. Like I'm with a partner, I have a partner with me. It's not like I'm doing it on my own. There was other people going as well. It wasn't like it was just me doing the presentation. 5 other people having to present, we're all in the same boat. Like, you know when you tell yourself all these things beforehand to like help you calm down, like help you relax, but none of it works. That's why I think we resort to overthinking. Like it's just pleasurable. It gives you a bit of comfort that all the right things and all the techniques, the breathing, the calming techniques, like none of them work. Overthinking gives you comfort and it's pleasurable in a way that other people I think just don't understand. Pleasurable is an interesting word because you know I could say overthinking is comforting, overthinking is reassuring. I think it's both of those things, but I do think it's actually pleasurable. Like I think to sit in like an awkward nervous state and just sit in the nervousness is a bit too uncomfortable and a bit too painful. Like the opposite of pleasure I think is pain. That could be dissected a bit more, but I do think that is the opposite. But then to sit in like, oh my god, I've got to do this presentation, I'm going in 3 minutes, I'm going in 2 minutes, to sit in that feeling and not try to overthink my way out of it is honestly so painful that I think we resort to like the pleasurable thing and the comforting thing of overthinking it all. So that's I think why we do it. But there's more. For example, I think smart people overthink. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to overthink, because naturally the smarter you are, I'm assuming smart is like knowledge, information, the more knowledge you have, the more tools you have to do the overthinking. It's kind of like if you were like a chef, like the more food you have, the more you can cook, the more knowledge you have, the more you can overthink. Like I think sometimes it's a double-edged sword, being like an intelligent person or being an overachiever, being someone that like knows a lot about things, being someone who's maybe even older, more wise. But then sometimes I don't know, I think wise is a bit of a weird one, because I think if you're like an older person, 60, 70, 80, like you've got life experience under your belt, like you've done this, like you're not going to overthink because you know how toxic it can be and how it messes with your head so much. But that's a different topic. Naturally as well, when you're a smart person, you know how to like come to a solution, you know how to get a question and find the answer, or you know how to have a problem and find the solution, you know how to problem solve, and naturally you problem solve by thinking. So in your own personal life, when you've got problems, you tackle that by thinking as well, but then sometimes it goes toxic and it goes into overthinking. There's something to be said as well about being afraid of making mistakes. For example, I saw a girl on TikTok talk about too many of us now are afraid to be seen trying. Like we're too scared and the stakes are too high to be seen doing something badly or doing something for the first time, that we put pressure on ourselves to do it right and do it correctly. I know I put pressure on myself to perform and do really well, and everything I do, whether it's uni to videos to personal life to making friends to meeting new people, like I want to put across my best foot forward. And I think it's a really good standard to have. It's really good that you have that like measure for yourself, but then it can mess with your mental health as well. One big fat illusion and lie that we all need to get rid of is thinking that you can actually think your way to the solution, or that you can think your way through every single possible scenario to come to the final result. Like there is no destination with overthinking. You think that you've got a list of scenarios, what could go wrong, what could go right. If I think about those two, then I'll come to a solution. And then once I think about those two, I'll think about what I'll do in those cases, then I'll know, like, then I'm done. But you're never done overthinking, like, you're never done. There's always more. It's literally like you open one, like, you go down one branch, then there's going to be two more open, then you go down both of those two branches, then there's 5 more, then you go down those, and then it never ever ends. There is no end to overthinking. And I think that's the illusion that you catch yourself in, thinking that you can finish or you can be done, but it's just never done. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, that is literally the purpose of why I'm thinking through all these situations. Like, that's why I drive myself insane. It's so that I can finish and, like, come to a conclusion. Like, oh, I know what to do now. But then I don't know what to do, because then when you do it in the real thing, like, it never ends up happening how you planned it to or how you think it will. And something else always happens in real life that you never even planned for. Like, reality is unpredictable, which is never accounted for when you're overthinking. Like, you think in a way that's like, I can predict what's going to happen. I can predict reality and how this presentation's going to go. Or I can predict the questions that people are going to ask when I finish. But you can't. And it's always like, it's always humbling when it happens in real life, because you never ever plan for what actually happens. To some extent, I think overthinking is all about control. If you have a fear of the unknown, or like a perfectionist, if you have a really high standard for yourself and you've got pressure on yourself to perform and look good and say the right thing, be perfect essentially, and you don't like things being out of your control and being unknown, you don't like knowing like things could go a different way that you haven't planned for because you want to look perfect. You can't risk looking like you're trying, or like, you know, you're an amateur. You want to look like you're good at things, or at least you want to look like you're really, really good at things, or at bare minimum, you want to look like average. So you have to plan for it so that you look average or good. Then things are out of your control. So overthinking to some extent is all about control. You just want control over the situation. And I think this only happens with perfectionists, or people that have like high standards for themselves, or people that are overachievers, people that just have like high expectations for themselves to look a certain way and to deliver, people that are too scared of being seen like they're trying or that they're not good enough. To some extent, you could argue that overthinking is more common in insecure people that aren't as comfortable with looking like they're not very good at something, or people that aren't very comfortable looking like they can't do a presentation, like people that aren't very comfortable looking like they're not good at something. Like, you have to look like you're good at that thing, but then how can you look like you're good at that thing? You have to think about it and plan and like think through every possible situation. Because it's all about control, you could argue that to some extent you're a control freak, or I'm a control freak, because I have to control every single bit of how I'm going to present this thing, and like how I'm going to put myself across, how I'm going to answer the questions, how I'm going to like turn to my partner, and how I'm going to be like, okay, your turn now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm planning everything, and it's ridiculous because it's just a presentation that no one's going to remember in like a week's time. But I can't look like I can't look like I'm bad. I don't want to look like I'm bad. I'm insecure about this. Like, I have to have a certain standard. I put pressure on myself, and now it has to like look really good. Something that came to me when I was planning the video, which I didn't expect, was the more that you want control, the less that you probably have. Like, if you're someone that's desperate to have like a situation in your grasp, and like you've got control of the situation, the outcomes, what could go wrong, what could go right, you're thinking through every single branch. If you're trying to have so much control over that situation, do you actually have control? That's something to think about. What does having control over a situation even mean? To me, that just means like you've got it under control. Obviously, you've got it under control. It doesn't mean that you've got a plan for every situation at all. It just means like you can handle it. Like, anything goes well, you can handle it. Anything goes wrong, you can handle it. Things go unpredictable, like, it just, like, you got it. Like, you're fine. Like, I think having things under control, which is kind of what we're striving for as overthinkers, just means like the infinite number of outcomes that could happen, you're cool with them all. And that doesn't mean that you think through them all, which is how we're trying to get to that situation, or how we're trying to get to the outcome. We're trying to get to the common outcome of just having things under control by overthinking. But actually, you could have that just by like being confident, I guess, or just being a bit more relaxed and chilled. Like, there's people who just effortlessly do things well, or effortlessly have things under control, and I'm sure that they didn't overthink their way there because it's effortless, whereas overthinking is effortful. Like, it requires a lot of effort. And I also think the more you overthink, sometimes the less authentic you are. Like, especially if it's in like a person-to-person thing, like you're overthinking an interaction with a friend or something on a date, like you're overthinking like a relationship conversational thing, you're probably going to come across as less authentic because you've rehearsed stuff, even if you haven't tried to. Whereas people that are kind of more confident and chilled and laid back and don't have to worry about overthinking, they've just got it under control, they're more authentic. They're just themselves. Like, they've got it under control. It's interesting how the world of overthinking, insecurities, being a control freak, like how they all overlap. Because I think maybe even perfectionist, I'll throw that in. There's a massive overlap between them all. And I think the chances of you having one probably increases your chances of having other ones. Like, for example, if you're a control freak, you maybe are an overthinker. You're overthinking all the things that you're trying to control. Or if you're insecure, you might be a perfectionist. You're insecure about how you look, how you talk, how you act. So you try to be perfect and then you kind of like overdo it sometimes. One thing I know for sure as an overthinker myself, as someone who's trying to get things under control by thinking through every single scenario under the sun, as messy as that is and as chaotic as that is and how it gets me nowhere, something I realised is that overthinking doesn't protect you, overthinking hinders you. Just like you are less authentic the more you overthink, you're just less yourself. Like in every situation, no matter how perfect you're trying to be or how you're not trying to show that you're insecure, I'm sure you want to be yourself. But you can't be yourself if you've like conducted like a plan in your head and you've got like a structure and you've got like different like spider webs and diagrams of what you should say. If this goes wrong, say this, and if that goes wrong, say that. Like, you can't be yourself if you're following like an algorithm. And in a way, when you overthink as well, you kind of make the world smaller. Like, you kind of think that I can think through everything that can happen. The only things that can happen are like 6 things and you've thought through them all. But actually, like, come on, like, you know, like the world is a big place. Like, there's not just 6 things that can happen. There's infinite things that can happen. Yes, the person you're about to have a conversation with that you're overthinking might say yes or no. But like, in their world, there's so many different emotions and feelings behind that yes, behind that no. Like, there's so many different ways that the world could go. And you kind of shrunk it in a way with your overthinking, just so that you can like digest it all. Not that that's a bad thing or that's a good thing, it's just something to be aware of. Like, that's what's happened behind all of your overthinking. But it's important to mention, understanding that we all want control because we're control freaks or overthinkers, whatever you want to call it. We want things under control. That's why we overthink. But that's not the way to get there. The way to get there is what? Well, what I kind of think, after I did some digging online and watched some videos, listened to some podcasts, I kind of think you can't gain control by holding on, you gain control by letting go. On this podcast called Spiraling Higher, one of the guests was talking about when you're talking through a walkie-talkie, you're trying to talk to someone, you have to press down, don't you, when you're talking, and then like you let go when it's like sent, or I guess you let go when you hear them, like when they talk back to you. And she was kind of explaining, like, if you have a really important message and you press down and you just press down forever and you don't let go, no one's going to hear that message. Like, they can't talk back to you. You have to let go to like receive the message. Similar to control, you can't get control by holding on, you have to let go. I know for sure the next time I'm in a stressful situation, maybe my next presentation, I know I'll have one coming up soon, like they always come up. But the next time I have a presentation, I'm going to have it in the back of my mind that I'm nervous, I'm feeling nervous as I have to stand up and talk in front of everyone. But thinking through all the different things that could happen and the questions that could come up, that is not going to help. What is going to help is me just like sitting in the uncomfortable feeling, like feeling a bit weird. I'm not going to hold on to the control. Imagine like this lip gloss is like all the different scenarios and like overthinking. I'm not going to hold on to all the thoughts and situations and plan them all and stuff. I'm going to just like let go of that. I'm just going to feel uncomfortable. Even though I'm not overthinking, I'm just going to let go and see what happens. And maybe I will stumble across my words. Maybe I'll miss out the facts and I'll get the slides wrong and I won't hand over to my partner to do it properly. But at least then, like, I actually am more myself. And do you know what? Sometimes I think when you're less stressed, you perform better. Like, each time I've been stressed in something and super nervous, the stress makes me do it worse. Like, it gets worse the more stressed I am. It feels scary to let go of the lip gloss and let go of the thoughts, but actually, like, in the long run, yes, it's scary. It'll be more worth it though. Like, I promise you'll perform better. I know I'm gonna do better if I'm not like planning out everything. It's just the initial stage of like feeling awkward about it. Being an overthinker is nothing more than feeling like you have to like do more and say more and think more and come to a conclusion more, which is why I think a lot of overthinkers are overachievers. Which is why in my deep dive video on overthinkers, I kind of debunk what motivates us and what makes us like think in this way, like what is actually like going on inside of our heads. In that video I go into a lot of depth, but that is enough from me. I'll talk to you in that video.